I'm Pastor Dave Bryant, pastor of the Church of Glad Tidings, Yuba City, California. And I have with me today somebody that I really love a lot and admire, and that's Lara Logan. And Lara, I was praying for you many years ago because I thought here is a courageous truth teller. And so I prayed for you for many years before I met you, but I'm
Thank
honored
you.
to know you, and I want to thank you for taking the time and making the effort to come to our Rev 17 conference that's happening in June. We'll be talking about that, but the whole issue today is to talk about the egregious evil of sex trafficking in America,
Mhm.
what's happening to children. And Laura, you've been right in the front lines of that fight for a long time, and so. Why don't you just say hi to everybody and bring us up to date on uh, the lay of the land as you see it, what's happening, and what we can look forward to going down the pike in terms of trying to end this this evil of sex trafficking that's worldwide, but it
Mhm.
the hub is right here in America. So, Laura, thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Dave. I have just on my podcast, Going Rogue with Lara Logan, I just have the second part of an interview out right now. That is, I think, a very important interview for people to listen to. When I take on, a subject, I try very hard to learn as much as I can, and I turn to people who know a lot more than me because that's the best way I learn from them, right? And
Right.
I try to find the best people in that space. And so one of the things I just have really for the last few months have been exploring is a whole new front in child trafficking, and what it is peer to peer trafficking
Mm.
through online digital networks. So this is something that has increasingly come up in my conversations with people who rescue kids. And in conversations with people like, Bazzel Tina from ARC, Association for Recovery of Children, who you know very well, like the best
Yes.
people, right? Yako Boyens from Yako Boyens Ministries and
Yeah.
his amazing team, Tammy Barry, and people like that. People who've been on the front line of this, Jackie Alado from, No Trafficking Zones. These are people who are fighting on legislative level, who are on the front lines, who are physically rescuing kids. And when they talk about the reconstruction of kids, right? When they talk about how you put children back together, how you rescue them physically, but then how you take care of their needs, both emotional and physical, but of course spiritual, because we know there's a spiritual thing that happens. When people are raped, there's a rape demon that enters people, and
Right.
and over time, some of these kids, they don't know how to live outside of that demonic place anymore.
Right.
They've become completely separated from themselves just to survive, right?
Yeah. Right.
And as something I learned from you actually through my husband is that you can't get rid of a demon that you keep inviting to stay,
There you
right?
go.
Yes, and
Right.
so you have to be aware of these things. So
Right.
very interestingly, what I was learning as we were working on solutions to trafficking and what you do with kids who are rescued and how you help them. It's very complex because there's a lot of different kids. They're at different levels. Some of them are babies that are born in the United States. Some of them are older. Some of them are trans. Some of them are this, that, whatever, right? And so one of the things that came up was that you have to be very careful about who you put in the room. Like the reality is that you can't put a big bunch of trafficked kids together because
Right.
at least one of those kids is going to be a recruiter and groomer,
Right.
and it's going to be trafficking. And the most powerful form of trafficking, the most effective actually, is peer to peer. So what does that have to do with my latest interview that's out now? My interview is with a woman, Becca Spinks, who has spent a lot of time immersed in the world of satanic accelerationist cults. Okay, and you might wonder what on earth is that? Well, accelerationists are these people that believe that in by doing evil and proliferating evil and dark energy on earth, they can accelerate the collapse of humankind. And,
Yeah.
there's a whole other dimension to it where a portal opens up and some, God comes out and, and they ascend to whatever the hell nonsense it is that they,
Right.
believe in. But,
Right.
but, but why is this important? Well, obviously that is a godless vision of the world, right?
Right.
And one that is drenched in blood and
Right.
pain and suffering.
Right.
But this also, part of these online networks is another thing called incels, which any young person watching this is going to be, rolling their eyes. Oh, I know what incels are. Well, incels are these, these people, a lot of them kids who are involuntarily celibate. So they've come to the belief that they cannot function, in real life because they are undesirable. They can't get a partner. They can't get anybody to like them or whatever. So they're involuntary. It's not voluntary. They're
Right.
involuntarily celibate. So what are a lot of these people? A lot of them are pedophiles. And what do all of these different parts of this dark online network, right? What do they all have in common? Well, they encourage children to harm themselves, right? Sometimes cutting all the way to the bone, by the way.
Right.
And also, what do they use? They use animals as a training ground, just like they use pornography to train kids for sex trafficking so that
Right.
they know what to do, just
Right.
like they use OnlyFans to train girls into becoming part of the porn industry. They use the abuse, torture, and murder of animals to groom kids for both self-harm but also for harming others. And part of what is so fascinating about this, Dave, is that our definition of what it is to be trafficked has really changed a lot over the last 20, 30 years. It used to be that was very narrowly defined as crossing an international border. And I had Jaco Boyens' sister Elanka Deaton, who was trafficked for 6 years in the music industry. She said to me, I want people to know that I was taken from my home by my manager and I was raped and I was returned home. I didn't cross any border, you know?
Right.
And so our definition, when I was at 60 Minutes, actually, I looked at doing a story on trafficking and I discovered that they had then redefined trafficking because now it's about forcing someone, having someone operate beyond their own will and not
Right.
have the ability to escape, right? They're not in control of their movements and so on and so on. There's other facets to this definition. Well, for me, what I realized is that these dark online networks of accelerationists and incels, and there's other groups, there's the groups like 764, which is under investigation. There's investigations in every FBI field office in the country, according to the FBI now, into 764. There's MKU, which is the maniac murder cult, which is out of Ukraine, right, which is linked to the third assassination attempt on Donald Trump, the kid who killed his parents and then was going on this operation to kill Trump. He was linked to the maniac murder cult. There was a guy from there who was he was arrested with a plan. He was going to dress as Santa Claus and take candy laced with ricin and go into New York City and Times Square and that on Christmas and give free candy to minority kids and and murder them that way. So these are murderous people, and these networks are related to mass shootings. This is
Yes.
where kids are being exploited and where they are being recruited.
Right.
And I've watched some of these videos, Dave, where you hear like literally they're getting a young girl to bite the head of her hamster,
Yeah.
and you can hear the demonic forces and
Right.
presence in their voices.
Right.
And this one kid says to her, do it, or I'm going to F up your
Right.
life, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, you now don't just have one trafficker, right? Now through technology, that girl can have 3, 4, 5, 15, 16, 20 traffickers, right? There was
Right.
a Canadian documentary actually called, I think it's called by a TV show called The Fifth Estate. And people can look it up at CBC, The Fifth Estate. And this girl and her mother this mother describes her daughter being in the grip, right, of these online network
Right.
traffickers.
Right.
And literally her daughter they persuade her to kill herself in a bloodbath. So she will boil herself alive in a bathtub of boiling bloody water. So she's cut herself, every inch of her body is cut. They get you to carve their names into your body and this kind of thing. Her mother is on the other side of a locked door. Her daughter is in the bathroom, in the bathtub, and she is so tortured by these people who are trafficking her through the digital world, that she is willing to kill herself and end her life and
Sure.
get into a bathtub that, of course, that is of scalding, boiling water, where it's a bloodbath because of all the cuts. And she's
Right.
got a chain around her neck and she's trying to strangle herself while her
Wow.
mother is beating on the bathroom door.
Yeah.
I mean, Dave, the terrifying part about this is that for the 2 years that they were trafficking that girl, she was living at home
Yes.
with her mother. And it's
Yes.
almost like having an autistic child, because
Yep.
what happens is they're just receding from you. That person that you know and love is just
Right.
disappearing,
Yep.
and they're harder and harder and harder to reach. And they
Yep.
are living under a demonic authority. So
Absolutely.
it's really extraordinary for me what God shows me and what I learn along the way. Honestly, I'm not really coming to Rev because I'm speaking. I'm coming to Rev because I know I need to learn from you and all the people that you have there. This is
Yes.
a part, there's a dimension to spiritual warfare and to faith that, I'm lacking.
Yeah.
And I'm coming to take some crib notes.
Well, let me just say publicly, uh, I'm thrilled that you're coming to speak, and I know it'll be a highlight to the conference. But that aside, I would be happy for any reason whatsoever that brought you to Yuba City. So we're
Thank you.
looking forward to actually meeting together. Let me just say this as we unpack this a little. I'm sure you found this out. I certainly have, in all that we've been involved in exorcisms and seeing the ugly underbelly of what's happening in the world and the reality of evil. Most people just put their head in the sand because they can't conceive of human beings being that evil. And so it's easier for them to play like we're conspiracy theorists and that doesn't really happen and all is
Yeah.
well because they're people that can't even imagine intentionally harming a child. And some of the things that you've just talked about, some of the things we haven't talked about that happen regularly, they can't conceive of how a human can be that evil. So I want to just address that because as humans, we're made in the image and likeness of God, and we're born pure as children. We're born
Mhm.
in a sinless state. Now, I don't want to get into generational curses and all different things that can happen, but the simple truth is, uh, babies are born um, guilt-free and sinless.
Beautiful.
They're beautiful, and
Hmm.
so they become the epitome of the children of God. They're made in God's image and likeness, and they're pure. And so to understand the reason behind all this, we have to understand that all that we know in this realm is a contest and a conflict between two kingdoms: the kingdom of God, which is righteousness, peace, joy, the power of the Holy Spirit, all things good, all things noble, the virtues that the human heart resonates to, versus a kingdom that is devoid of all good. It's purely evil. It's demented. It's twisted. And does it go beyond human capacity? Absolutely. It is empowered by the fallen ones. The book of Genesis says about them that every intention of their hearts were only evil continually. That's a level of evil that is hard to conceive of. But that is, in a nutshell, the reason that we have this manifestation of gross evil in the world. And to fill it out just a little bit, God is life. All life comes from God. The kingdom of darkness is void of life. which is why they worship the dread Lord of death, right? So,
Mhm.
so because God is life and life is from God, then for them to extinguish it is the best they can do to hurt an infinite and all powerful God. And when they do that to children, it's the ultimate affront to God. And if you don't understand that, you'll forever be asking yourself the question: could this even be true? How could people be so evil? It's the kingdom of darkness that all this derives from and is built upon. And so that brings me to what we're doing together in Yuba City in June.
Can I
We're
add
doing it.
something to what you just
Yeah,
said,
yeah.
Dave?
Please do.
Okay, so when I was working, I spent a year working on the border, and then I was doing a series for Fox Nation about the border, 4 1 hour films, and I spent a lot of time watching videos of what was really happening in Mexico and what really happens at the hands of the cartels.
Hmm.
And as everybody knows, they're unbelievably violent and cruel and sadistic. And
Right.
so I had this ongoing question in my head, why? And
Right.
I was haunted, obviously, by a lot of the videos and photographs and that, and trying to understand. And I had this constant thing of trying to understand why are they so brutal to these
Right.
children?
Right.
And how can you be so brutal? And what is the
Right.
purpose of this? And
Right.
so I asked someone once. I was having a conversation with a gentleman who doesn't speak publicly and who doesn't speak to a lot of journalists. And he spent 2.5 years underground training to infiltrate the what he calls the global cult at the
Right.
UN. But his faction, the faction that he was specifically tasked with infiltrating, was the Islamic faction, which was the
Right.
first thing that took me by surprise, because I was like, I'm a 9/11 person,
Yeah.
right? I thought we were at war. And then you realize, oh, no, wait, it's a global cult. Of course, there's an Islamic faction
Right.
and so on. There's a faction for everyone on earth.
Right.
So, but one thing that I asked him once, I said to him, because we're, good friends now, and I said, I'm trying to understand the level of violence, particularly when it comes to children, because, I was dealing with um, people in Mexico, like investigators that have dealt with child trafficking for
Right.
years. And we went to a city in Mexico that was built on generations of trafficking, where a university actually did a study, and kids in that town, young boys grow up, their dream is to become a pimp. I interviewed a pimp. Um, and he told me how when he was 12, he was taken on his first journey with his father and his grandfather. They took him to Chihuahua, which is a very poor state in Mexico, and how they bought the first 6 girls that he sort of ever knew. They have a festival once a year where they parade the new virgins, the new young virgins, through the town, and the men choose who they're going to rape that night. And they take the babies away from the girls, and they do all kinds of
Right.
awful things. It's a dark, horrible, horrible place in
Right.
many ways. And I went there with my team, but so I'm trying to grapple with these things and understand why. And so on our way back one night from Tenancingo, late at night, everyone else in the van had fallen asleep, and I'm talking to this Mexican guy who had been involved with rescuing kids for a long time, many years, and I asked him, you know, why? Like, tell me about
Right.
what have you seen? What do you know? And I was asking him about the child porn, and I said, is it mostly girls or mostly boys? And he said, no, 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 it's both boys and girls. I said, how old are these kids in these videos typically? Because I've never looked at child porn. And he said they are usually roughly most popular like around the age of 5. Now you find kids all the way to babies, and you find older kids, of course, but he said average age around 5. And I'm haunted. My heart I can't help
Yeah.
it. So I ask him, okay, so are they very violent with these kids? And he's like, he thinks about it, and he says, not as much with the girls, but with the boys, yes, very violent. And and we're talking about people who surgically remove limbs and, pump the bodies, people full of heroin and stuff to stop the bodies going into shock. And the same guy tells me that he's seen somebody kept alive for 2.5 weeks with no arms and no legs, right? Just the torso and the head. And I've seen this happen on video. I've seen them surgically removing people's limbs. I've seen them beheading someone while they've pumped him full of drugs so that he doesn't go into shock. So he's conscious of this beheading the whole way through. I mean, so I've seen indescribable things, right? And I can't get this thing out of my head of these boys, little boys who are subjected to such incredible violence. And we talked about other things I won't mention here, but I think I've tortured your audience enough. But this is what is partly in the back of my head when I say to my other friend, why the kids? Why? What is it with this thing of causing so much pain and suffering to these young children? And he looks at me and he says, he just shakes his head and he's like, you're looking at it through your own eyes. You're not looking at it the right way. You're not looking at it through their eyes. And of course, that's what he was trained to do, right? He's read their
Right.
ancient texts. He's had the Dead Sea Scrolls read to him and translated from Aramaic. He said incredible things, this man. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, they view everything, every act, every decision, every choice is not about you or kids or humanity. It's about one thing and one thing only. I said, what? And he said, God. Satan knows
Exactly.
that he can never defeat God. It's outside of his capability. The movie doesn't end on Satan's side. He never
Right.
wins. He
Right.
cannot create life. He is not the creator. He
Right.
was created by God. He will never be victorious over God. So,
Yeah.
what he has created is a system that seeks to inflict the most pain and suffering on God that can ever be inflicted. And
Exactly.
that's how you rise within the ranks of the satanic and the demonic, right? Is that
Yeah.
the more pain and suffering and violence that you inflict on God's creation, the greater the rewards are for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Because the only real victory, that's the real victory they have over God when they can get people to use the free will, which is the gift that God has given us, and we can exercise our free will and we choose evil over good. We
Yep.
choose dark over light. We choose Satan over God. When we make that choice, we wound God, right?
Yeah.
It hurts
Right.
him. But nothing, no one is closer to God than those babies you
Yes.
described.
That's right.
Those,
Right.
when we are born pure and in the image of our creator and
Yeah.
our father.
Right.
And so that's why they take young children, and I don't know, how much your audience can stand, but they take babies. I interviewed a guy who walked into a room full of dead babies. They teach those babies, instead of what does a baby know how to do, how to suckle so that they can have life, that they can get
Right.
milk and they can have life.
Right.
Well, they train them to suck on their genitals from the moment they're born. They're
Yeah.
never given any milk. They're
Yeah.
never given any food. They are starved from birth. And
Right.
then they are drowned in semen. That's how they die. And they do this in the thousands. This is happening somewhere right now as we're speaking about it.
Yeah.
This is not the first person I've interviewed about this.
Yes.
People from different parts of the world who've told me about exactly the same thing. A
Right.
woman from El Salvador, a guy from America. This is a very real thing that is
Right.
happening. And
Right.
and if we understand, it's part of what we learn, right? We are the center of our universe. We're the center of our existence. We look at everything through our eyes and our lens. It's kind of natural. It's instinctive in some ways. But for me, it's been a process of recognizing that when God is the center of my life, it's very peaceful. Like there's
Yes.
there's a lot of peace and joy
Yeah.
in that. And I stopped wrestling with certain things because I realized I give that up to God. I realized, oh, that's not mine. That's not mine because I'm not the center of the universe.
Right.
And you know what I mean? And it's like
Yes,
a
I do.
revelation where it's like,
Yeah.
what? What? It's not about me?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Hello.
But that's the same thing, is that even though it's very noble to care about kids and what happens to them, and every one of us, I believe, has a responsibility to stop this from happening.
Yeah.
and to know and understand it so that we can take action against it and to not surrender to it, not be okay, not say, oh, I know they rape kids every day and what can I do about it, right? Not that's defeat. But
Right,
at the same time, when you recognize that it's not about you, it's not about humanity, it's not even about the kids, it's really a war on God and everything around us, even the war against humanity, the depopulation agenda, all of these
right,
things. They're
right.
really about God, not
It's
us.
all about God. Yep. It's all about good
Did I
versus
say that was
evil.
a quick story?
Yeah. No, thank you, Laura, for sharing that. And remember, for those who are listening, join Laura and I and a bunch of our friends June 20th, 21st, and 22nd in Yuba City, California, for the Rev 17 conference. I'm going to unpack that in a minute, but it stands for Revelation 17. And it's about defeating the whore of Babylon, which, if you've not heard about that, stay tuned here for a hot second. But we're going to be bringing together um, some of the most courageous leaders in this fight against evil, and some of the most informed people, like Lara Logan, for instance, and others. She mentioned Alanka Deaton. She will be there sharing her story about being
Ilanka
trafficked.
is amazing.
Yes.
She is amazing.
Yeah,
Right
I
here on
actually,
this set where I'm sitting now, I did one of the most powerful interviews I've ever done with Ilanka Deaton. She's incredible.
yes. And I listened to it and cried through it. And
Oh,
that's why we reached out to Alanka and asked, could you please do whatever it takes to be here? So it's going to be a great conference. But I want to talk about this because we've already established this whole thing is about good versus evil, two kingdoms in conflict, one that cannot lose and one that cannot win. And so the Bible amazingly predicts the days we're living in prophecies, some of which are 4,000 years old, but many of which are 2,000 years old. In the book of Revelations, the last book of the New Testament, and it talks about the time of transition between the ending of this age and the dawning of a new and beautiful age, in the words of Scripture, wherein dwells only righteousness. That's what we're all looking for. But anyway, it talks about the culmination of both good and evil, so that evil will be as intense as it's ever been on the blue planet, and righteousness will be as strong as it's ever been. And those two forces will come into conflict, and of course, the good news is the good guys win. But in that drama, it portrays the culmination of worldwide evil in a
mm.
system which is called Mystery Babylon, the mother of all harlots, and then in a personage which is called the whore of Babylon. And the reason we've chose Rev 17 for this conference is that in Revelation chapter 17, it talks about this whore coming out of this corrupt system. And it says that she's gaudy and vile and drunk on the blood of the righteous. And she's bragging, I will rule as queen forever. Nobody can stop me. And it says that she makes the kings of the earth wealthy through trafficking. And then right
Uh,
there in a 2,000-year-old prophecy, it has a list of what she traffics in. And it includes basically anything that you can turn for a dime, but it goes through this whole list in this crescendo up to the grand finale. And it says, and she traffics in human souls. And so it's this horrifying picture of extreme evil. But I always tell people, keep reading. Don't stop in the bad part. If you're going through hell uh, for God's sake, keep going. Don't camp out there. See what happens at the end of the story. And so, in this amazing portrayal of this great conflict, which we are living in, Laura, and so the way it's portrayed is it says that this system and this personage that represents the culmination of evil. It says, "She shall be destroyed in a single day, and the
Mm.
kings of the earth will marvel, saying, What happened to the whore that rode on the beast? For she's been completely destroyed in a single day." Now, that's what I'm looking for. And when that happens, I want to be able
Mm.
to slap five with you, Laura, and say, We did it. We jack slapped that bitch right off her beast. And and
Okay.
somebody's going to do it. So at GT, we don't just read about promises. We say, why not here? Why not now? Why not us? Somebody's going to have the courage to do this, and so we're that's what we're working for to get it done. Now, so that's the conference. We're bringing together the best of the best. I want to encourage you, if you're listening, to go to one or two websites. You can go uh, to the Church of Glad Tidings.com and look under events, and you'll see there the Rev 17 conference. It will sell out. So I want to encourage you to go there and buy a ticket. The tickets are only $49. You can buy VIP tickets for $199. But the point
And
is,
that's for all 3 days?
yep, for all 3 days. The
Wow,
point
that's a
is,
good deal.
it's a great deal because we're trying to get the message out. And as much as anything, Laura, I want to record this and just inundate the internet with a
Yes.
thousand reels of clips of Lara Logan talking about it, and Craig Sawyer and Bazzel and Tina and
Yeah. All
Dr.
good
Doug
people.
Frank. We have an amazing group coming together. So don't miss out on it. And the whole thing's being done as a fundraiser. And I want to talk about that just for a minute because this problem that Laura so vividly unpacked, but it's everywhere. There is no place on earth where some of this isn't happening. And so it's all of our problem. And there's a million different pieces to this puzzle. And it's a big, audacious hairball if you look at the whole thing. But we have a saying at Glad Tidings, none of us is as good as all of us. And so instead of trying to
Yeah.
reinvent the wheel, what we're saying is, what can we bring into this mix? What's Lara Logan doing? What's Lee Dundas doing? What's the Bazzel and Tina doing? What's Doug Frank doing? What's Troy Brewer? Troy Brewer is a hero. He's going to be there. What's Mary O'Neill doing? And then,
Mary Flynn. Yeah.
and
General
then
Flynn's
what
sister.
can we add to
Mhm.
that? And so the vision that God put in my heart is that there is uh, it's a former low security women's prison. It's just 5 miles from the church, and it's 10 acres. And as a low security, a minimum security prison,
Yeah.
doesn't have any cells, it doesn't have any bars. It's just a big, a secure facility. And it was on the market for $17 million. We talked him down to 4 million, which is a heck of a discount to start off with, a $13 million discount. But anyway, when we got him down as low as we could go, we made a contract of sale. We have until the end of June to purchase that, or the contract's void. So it's right around the corner. But I personally, my whole life has been a life of trusting God for miracles. So when it comes to miracles, God can show up in the showdown and throw down any way he wants, and it
Yeah.
always works out. And so, but God's method is men. So we're trying to get the message out there and get people to help us to purchase this. And then the part that we want to contribute is a secure environment where these kids can put the wheels back on their wagon. Now, obviously, some of these kids will need 24/7 medical attention. Some of them
Yes.
will need, very intense psychological, spiritual um, uh, rescue, really. There's all different kinds. Some of them will be able to be returned to homes and whatnot. But there are thousands of kids that do not have a home to go to.
That's right.
And what we want to do is provide an
Or whose
environment.
parents sold them or something like that, you know?
Exactly. Which,
Yeah.
thank you for bringing that up. But worldwide, a majority of trafficking is done by family members. They
Hmm.
sell their little sister, they sell their
Yeah.
own daughter. I was in Romania years ago, and a woman came out of a complex, saw I was American. She had two beautiful blonde little girls, one on each hip. And she said, "Hey, mister, I'll sell them to you for $50 each." And I just thought, wow, that's
Oh,
unbelievable. I even asked her, I said, where'd you get those children? She said, I had them. They're twins. And I said, "You would sell your children to me?" She said, "Oh, yeah, I can have more." But this is happening all over the world from infancy forward. We all have a part to play. But again, when we rescue those kids, we're obviously not going to return them to the home that sold them into sex slavery. And so the ideal is to find a stable home where there's a loving father and a loving mother, and that little nest that God intended. But there will be thousands of children that don't have such a place to go. And so the
that's
peace
right.
of heaven, what we're trying to do is transform a prison into a paradise, and then see these children transformed into what God intentioned for them to be. And so it'll be a place where we give them, food and clothing and lodging and
Shelter, yes.
medical help and pray for
Coma.
them. And, people ask me, what's the vision? And I just say, have you ever
Healing.
had a kid, or have you been a kid? What's the
Yeah.
vision for a kid? Is to provide everything that they need to flourish. And yeah, it's a big vision. It's actually something that is so big that it can't be done without divine intervention. But remember, God's method is men. He always uses men and women to do his purposes in the earth. And so we're inviting you to be a part of this. You can go to Peace of Heaven. That's like 70s type peace, right? Peace of
Uh-huh.
Heaven .com. No, excuse me, peaceofheaven.life. That's peaceofheaven.life. You can help us with donations. You can help us in praying for it. You can share that web link with your friends. But remember the Rev 17 conference that will be hosted June 20th, 21st, 22nd in Yuba City, California at the Church of Glad Tidings, the Embassy campus. That is a fundraiser to help us get this facility, which will transform, and it will be a place where kids can can have a taste of heaven, particularly those kids that have already had a taste of hell. And so that's what the vision is, and we welcome you to join us. For tickets, go to churchofgladtidings.com or peaceofheaven.life. That's churchofgladtidings.com or peaceofheaven.life, and join us. One last thing that I want to say, I know that Lara is friends with Bazzel and Tina Baz
I
and
am, yes,
and
very close
ARC,
to them.
Association for
Yeah,
the
they
Recovery
do
of Children.
amazing work.
They do
Extraordinary
amazing work.
people. Tina
Exactly.
is like an angel.
Yes. And everybody that is involved in this, it's a pretty well a universal testimony that the best training in the world is the ARC training. And
Yeah,
so
yeah, it really is
Boslotina
great.
will be there for the Rev 17. That's a Friday, Saturday, and a Sunday. But the following Monday, which is the 23rd, they'll, right on our campus, the Embassy of Heaven campus, they'll do a week of training, and it's the best training in the world. You'll be certified as a representative of ARC, and they're trying to get representatives in every county in America that understand child trafficking. They know how
Yeah.
it happens in real time. They know how it happens on the internet. They know what to look for on a child's phone. They know what it looks like when a child is under duress, maybe holding hands with somebody, but that child is under duress. It'll be the best training in the world.
Yes,
And I
they
want to
even,
encourage,
they teach realtors how to recognize a safe house. I mean, they really empower people. And I think, Dave, having worked in counter trafficking for a number of years now, the one thing I encounter all the time from people is, what can we do about it? What can we do about it?
Exactly.
And, when you talk about that there are a lot of people who can't conceive of that kind of evil, there are also a lot of people who are willing to confront this. But
Right.
what sort of breaks them is this feeling of powerlessness and
Right.
helplessness. And that's really what the art training is about, right? That's what Baz and Tina give you firsthand from their decades of experience doing this. Tina, began because her best friend in high school was trafficked, and her search and her journey into that world began with trying to find her friend. Baz's journey began in Somalia, in Mogadishu, right after Black Hawk Down. He was working for the CIA at the time, and he was on the ground there, and he was on his way. He tells the story of being on his way to the airport and driving past and seeing this kid on the side of the road, and something just said to him, there's something not right here. And that child, he stopped the vehicle and he went back and he began to look into it. And that child, he said, ended up being the first child that he rescued. And that was a long time ago, a
Wow.
very long
Awesome.
time ago. And there are a lot of charlatans in this
Oh
in this
boy.
world,
Yeah.
just like you find a lot of pedophiles working at Disney. Well,
Right.
there's a lot of bad people and traffickers working in counter trafficking.
Right.
And so it's really important for people who want to do the right thing and who want to contribute and who want to make this stop. Having access to the best people and to good people and people that you can trust is a really big deal. And
Yeah.
so, Boz and Tina, they are, Craig Sawyer, these kind of people, Ilanka Deaton, Jacob Boyens, these are the people that are doing real work. And they're not the
Right.
only ones. There are other good people out there. But it's sort of, it's kind of, it matters, right? It
Yes.
matters for people to know and understand that they're learning from the best who have
Yes.
done this firsthand, who are not talking about something they read on the internet. They're talking about things they've seen and done.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that. We really appreciate that, Laura. And we're going to wrap it up here, but I want you to remember this is all of our problem. There is a universal fight between good and evil. Make sure you're on the right side of that line. And
Yeah.
then don't just stand by passively, but ask yourself, what
Yeah.
can I do to be a part of this? And I hope you can join us for the Rev 17 conference, June 20th, 21st, and 22nd. You can hear Laura again and many of the people that she's just referred to. And if you can, go to the ARC website, that's Association for the Recovery of Children, and sign up for their training. That will be the following week right there on our campus. And then that following Saturday, they're going to be a commencement ceremony, and everybody will receive their diplomas. And
Wow.
Bazzel and Tina will be there with us at the
That's
Church of Glad
amazing.
Tidings. It'll be a really great time. But remember, go to churchofgladtidings.com, check out our events, or go to the Peace of Heaven, that's 70s style peace of heaven dot life, and join us if you can. If you can't come out for some reason, watch for it online. But Laura, I want to thank you again. I already mentioned this, but you have no idea, sweetheart, how happy I was to find out that you
Wow.
had jumped through the hoops and changed your plans to be with us. And so I really want to thank you for that.
Thank you, Dave. And thank you for those prayers, by the way, before that you were sending my way before we even met. I
Yes, and
appreciate it very
still
much.
am, sweetheart. I pray for you all the time. You are a
Thank you.
lioness, and I am so proud to know you. So thank you for joining us. God bless you, Laura. I'll see you soon at the Church of
I will
Glad
see you
Tidings.
soon. Yes.
Yeah, and thanks again for coming on.
Thank you, Dave. Take care. See you
Okay,
soon.
love you.
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.
Love you.
Bye.